Hey guys, welcome back to my channel. This is going to be video number 3 of the Sebart Avanti. Hopefully this one's not terribly long, but I've got a lot to do in this video. Last one we got the pipe and the turbine installed. Now we're going to have to figure out how to fit all of the electronics and equipment in the airplane. The airplane comes with 2 trays. They screw inside the airplane, create a nice little floor. The plan is to have the servo wires all routed underneath and then come up through the trays. I got to figure out how to organize all this on these 2 trays. We got a lot to go in. I've got the Model Aviation Products UAT, the ECU, the telemetry, gear controller, fuel pump, receiver, valves, filters. I decided to change things up a little bit. I'm not going to use the Sebart tank anymore. I bought this this tank from CM Jets. It's a fuel on the top and smoke on the bottom. So I'm going to try my hand at putting smoke in this airplane. I've got a Schwinn smoke pump and a smoke stick. So we're going to get that installed. I'm going to need another shut-off valve for that. Because we're going to be putting smoke on it, we're also going to need 2 fuel vents that'll go on the bottom of the airplane. So I got Pilot RC fuel vents. We've got our 2 batteries that we're going to have to put in there. I'm going to end up 3D printing a few parts, battery trays. I've got a mount for the telemetry unit and for the receivers. This is a temporary mount I printed up just to play around with before I printed the final piece to see how I wanted to install the UAT. So I'm going to lay these trays in the airplane and start trying to plan out my thought process here. Get them mounted and start wiring the aircraft. So I've been playing around with the trays and all the equipment, seeing where I want to mount things. I think this is probably what I'm going to end up doing here. I've got mainly the radio stuff in front, the gear, turbine stuff all on the rear tray. Planning on having the batteries in battery holders up on the front here. I've got room for my switches here. I'm going to have 1 switch for the power hub and 1 switch that's going to run power to the gear controller and the smoke pump. The other battery will get connected directly to the power hub. Probably going to mount the receivers on the side of the airplane, 1 on each side, run the antennas. Fuel line and smoke lines will end up getting put along the side here to run to the back. Bunch of through fittings are probably going to be in here, and in this area to allow me to hide the wires all under the trays. I try to do as much of a clean installation as I can, so we're going to try that. I got to get some mounts 3D printed. I got to get the receiver mounts printed, telemetry printed, a different color UAT mount. I'm going to probably do black. Got to get a bunch of stuff printed, and I'm going to start mounting all the equipment to the tray, get everything laid out, and then once that's all done, I'm going to remove everything, and I think I'm actually going to paint the trays. Thinking about painting them blue, kind of match the airplane a little bit. Anyway, let me get everything mounted, and we can work on wiring after that. Alright, I've got the trays pretty much done. Nothing's permanent at the moment. Cortex is obviously not on yet. Switch locations are cut in there. All the holes where I put grommets in to run the wires up through. Telemetry holders printing right now. Everything's screwed down and looks the way I want it to. This is basically what we're doing. We're going to pull all the wires out from the area underneath the tray. Everything's going to come up out of the grommets and go to where they need to, so there's not going to be a hole huge mess of wires to deal with up here. I'm going to get everything taken back off the boards, and I'm going to paint the boards. Just try to make it look a little nicer. Another thing I noticed that I'm going to have to do is the CM Jets fuel and smoke tank. The carbon brackets are too big, both on the back and the front. So I've marked them right there. I'm going to cut these off so that the fuel tank will sit down on the rails better. And we'll have to drill new holes and get this thing mounted to the spots in there. Yeah, so I'm going to get everything taken off the trays. I'm going to paint them, and then we can start putting everything back on. Had to order some new connectors. It's obviously the gear and brake stuff right here, but I had to order some new connectors. So let's get these trays painted and then I'll get to wiring. Alright, so I've got the trays done, primed them, painted them, clear coated them. I've got these rubber grommets installed for the wires to come up through the board. But all the equipment's screwed down already. One thing I got to do, since we're going to run all the wiring underneath these trays, the trays are going to have all these screws poking down. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to put a little CA to help hold screws in place, and then I'm going to clip off the ends of the screws and grind them down a little bit so they're not sharp, so that any wires that end up moving around underneath the tray don't get poked with the wires. I'm going to start wiring here soon. Trying to figure out where I'm going to put the batteries. It all depends on where the CG is going to be, whether I mount them in this section or in this section. So planning on having the receiver batteries on the right side of the plane and the turbine battery on the left side. Found these mountable XT60 plugs, and I ended up putting two of them right here. These will be for the two receiver packs, and then the turbine pack will get plugged in over here. So if I have to put the batteries up front or back here, they'll still be able to reach, no problem. Let's see, we got, again, the batteries. We're going to have one turbine pack and then two 2S 3500 receiver packs. One battery is going to go straight to the power hub. The second battery is going to go to the power hub, and then I'm also going to tap off that for the gear and brakes and the smoke pump. I'm going to get these clipped off, and I'm going to start working on the wiring. I got to make up the wiring harnesses for all the connectors and get these things installed here. Let me get started on that, and then we'll work on how we're actually going to wire all the equipment in here. Alright, so as I'm working on the wiring here, just want to go over a few things that we've got accomplished so far. Got an extension built for the nose wheel steering. Got the extension glued to the surface here so I could just unplug it in case I need to ever change this servo. I've got the wiring harnesses made up. Got the plugs mounted and labeled for the turbine. There's battery 1 and 2. Cables are being run. I've got the wires running to the ECU. Let's see, got the landing gear wires. All the landing gear and brakes are run up through here right now. Now I'm going to start tackling the all the servo wires. I want to go over one thing that I noticed. This problem I ran into when I was working on the MB339. One of the big downsides that I found to the Futaba power hub and using a Cortex. So initially what I wanted to do was run both of my 7003s into the receiver 1 and receiver 2 imports on the Cortex, and then you run the outputs to the S-bus, or the receiver 1 and 2 ports on the power hub, and then you could use the Cortex to stabilize whatever channels you wanted on the power hub. Problem is, Futaba does not runs the telemetry signals through S-bus 2. The Cortex only recognizes S-bus 1 feeding back to it. So what you couldn't get was any kind of telemetry sensor that you plugged into the power hub to transmit through the Cortex into the receiver so you could get it on your radio. The manual for the power hub states do not connect any telemetry sensors directly to the receiver. Even though you've got spare S-bus 2 ports on the receiver, they don't want you to plug them into these. I did contact Futaba about that as well, and they said whatever you do, do not do that. They said that the receiver ports are not, they don't have the power output apparently to handle the telemetry sensors, and when you do turn on the radio, the receiver voltage is only listed as 5, even though you have it set for 7.4 volts. That's what the servos receive. It only outputs 5 volts to the receivers to power them up. So apparently that's why they don't want you to do that. So there's a couple ways you can do it, and this is how I did it on that jet. Was ended up using the cable bloom from the Cortex, plugging all the stabilized servos into the Cortex, and basically just had the throttle, the flaps, the gear, and the brakes on the power hub. Kind of defeats the purpose of having the power hub. So you have to run all the power to the main flight controls from the Cortex. So we're going to do something a little different on this one. So we're going to separate the negative, positive wires from the signal wire. And we're going to run the positive and negatives to the power hub. And then we're going to run the signal wires up to the Cortex. The Cortex will be powered from an S-bus port from the power hub. I'm also going to make another jumper to give it just a little extra power, a little redundancy. But all the signal wires are going to be in here. So the servos are going to get the signal from the Cortex, but the power is coming from the power hub to run the servos. So we're going to experiment with that a little bit. That should work just fine. Now I've got my switches installed here too, and labeled the receiver power, and then gear and smoke. Had to run a separate switch because the gear controller and the smoke pump don't have like an internal shut off that if the receiver is off, these are off. These run power all the time, so have to run a switch to shut those off. The receiver power for the power hub runs right here. All it does is to tell the power hub to shut off is it connects the negative and the signal wire together, basically grounds it out, tells this to shut off. So this is actually reversed. So right now the circuit is closed, meaning the system is off, and when you turn it on, you open the circuit, which separates these two wires, ungrounds it, and then the power hub turns on. So I'm going to get to wiring all of this, separating out the wires. and come back and look at. Got a few other wires to run here. All the telemetry stuff for the turbine and throttle leads, and start working on getting this cleaned up. Alright, so I was working on the wiring for the Avanti, and I was pretty much done with it, and before I buttoned everything up, I was going to power things up, and I made a huge mistake. A mistake that almost cost me my airplane. So, see, I used to use Dean's connectors way back, like 15 years ago. I decided to switch to all EC connectors. So I use the EC5 for my high power stuff, EC3s for my, mid power stuff. Recently, a lot more things have been using XT60s for the, 60 amp and under section. And with the fact that you can, make panel mounted EC connector or XT connectors, I decided to switch all my batteries that use EC3s to XT60s. Well, I thought I was being as careful as I could be while I made everything, and I converted over 2 more batteries to XT60s. Well, I did it wrong. I did it backwards. Now, I plugged it into the airplane, and thankfully, the Futaba power hub did not supply power to anything, the Cortex, the radio system, the turbine, or anything like that. So that was all protected. Also, since the radio wasn't on, the gear controller did not try to do anything, so I saved my gear controller. The one thing that was not saved, and what ended up happening was the power got supplied to the smoke pump, which you see is not in the airplane anymore. And I had flames. I saw a spark, and I saw flames coming out of my airplane. And let's see if we can show it right there. There is the burn marks. There's smoke and soot residue all over the place. And here's what the smoke pump looks like now. So the pump's fine. It burned off the ends of the wires. This is what's left of the, it's basically a ESC for the smoke pump. So this is what's left of it. There's the board. There's a lot of the little chips and stuff. Here's the end. So smoke pump was literally on fire. I had probably about 8-inch flames coming out of my airplane. Disconnected the power, got the fire out. Luckily, the only thing other than the smoke pump that was damaged was I got a little bit of a singe on this is the turbine pump wire. I'm going to replace this wire. I probably can fix this, but for now I'm just going to replace it and we'll deal with this later. Ordered a new smoke pump. I am going to resolder the ends of these batteries, make sure they're correct. But again, I've been doing this probably, I've been doing this 30 years. The first time I've really hooked up a battery backwards like that. So yeah, make sure everything's right. As soon as I get the new smoke pump, I can get everything else wired. But in the meantime, while I'm waiting for all that, I'm going to start working on the fuel tank and start figure out where I want to run the wires or the fuel lines and everything. So yeah, so that's where I'm at. So pay attention to your battery leads. Alright, let's get working on the fuel system. Alright, so I'm getting the fuel vent fitting and the smoke tank vent fitting put in. I've got the fuel one done up here. It's pretty simple. Find out where you want to get it, drill a hole, and then I use a stepper bit to gradually enlarge in the hole. So I've got the second hole marked for the, this will be the smoke tank fitting. All we're going to do is drill a hole And then swap out to the stepper bit. And then we'll just step it up in size until we get the hole as big as we need to fit the vent fitting in. Probably going to need a little bit bigger than that. Yeah. See how that works? Perfect. So then, line it up the way you want it. You can drill holes for the mounting screws. You may have to end up putting some kind of backer on the inside of the fuselage to have the screws, to have something to bite against. But I'm going to put fuel line on the vent fitting and get these screwed into place. Alright, both the fuel vent and smoke vent fittings are put in place. Didn't need a backer at all. The screws actually threaded really nicely into the fiberglass. And then we got our finishing touches, our remove before flight tags. There we go. Looks pretty good. Okay, working on the fuel system here. Got the fuel line hooked up to the turbine, the shutoff valve, the fuel filter. I've got it running through the UAT out of the way. Got it running through the bulkhead right there with a little rubber grommet. I've got it running into the fuel pump and the feed line running into the UAT. Good news is my replacement smoke pump should be here today, so hopefully I can get that wired up today. Smoke stick is installed. There it is. Had to build a little wooden block to mount the stick to, sitting behind the exhaust cone there. Got a short Festo line hooking up to the shutoff valve. A couple keepers, again running through the bulkhead on this side, and then hook that up once the pump shows up, and get a look at the stick up the tailpipe here. I don't know if you can see it right there. Anyway, there's a smokestick's pretty much right in the center, maybe a little off to the right side there. That should be fine. The end of the stick's about 1.5 inches from the end of the exhaust. So get the I'm going to prep the tank and wait for that smoke pump to show up and get all that stuff wired up. And once that's in, that should wrap it up for video number 3. Alright, so here's a look at all the wiring. It's pretty much done. The only wires that aren't connected right now are the airspeed sensor. It's got to get mounted to the S-Bus 2 port up here. Probably going to end up mounting the unit up front here. I'm going to build a 3D print a little mount for this. The other items that are not installed are the 2 receivers. I'm going to get it on the balancer first before I actually figure out where I'm going to put them. See if I want to put them up here or back here, depending on where the batteries are going to go. So starting at the front, we've got the battery 1, battery 2 plugs, the turbine battery, the Cortex with the receiver power, the gear and smoke power. Here's the signal wires for all the main flight controls, power hub with all the power leads connected. All the leads to everything are run down underneath. We've got the controller, gear and brakes are hooked up. The telemetry unit's hooked up with its mount. Turbine's all wired up. And one last thing I forgot to show a little bit earlier with the fuel system was the fuel vents. So there's the fuel vents on this side, smoke vents on the other side. They got a couple keepers, routed them up along the inside of the this is the air intake for the engine. So there's what the inside looks like. Alright, so new spoke pump has arrived. I did not start it on fire this time. It's installed. The feed line to the smokestick is installed. I got the UAT mounted. Well, did end up with one more problem, and it's with the fuel tank. So I went to go test it. So on the fuel tank, the top section is the fuel. The bottom section is the smoke section. I've capped off both vent lines on the smoke and the fuel, heated the tubes up, crimped them off to make it airtight. Now, they're both vented right now. What I'm going to do is clamp off just the smoke side. So that side's clamped off. And then the fuel side, I'm going to blow air into the fuel side and clamp it off. Alright, so the fuel tank is pressurized. The smoke tank should not be, but when I release the smoke side, see if you can hear this. I don't know if you can hear it. All the air vented out the smoke section, and when I let go of the fuel side, there's no air that comes out. So that means there is a leak inside the tank between the fuel and the smoke section. I contacted CM Jets about this, and they said it was going to be extremely difficult to try to repair the inside of the tank. So what I did in the meantime is I ordered a new tank, and I'm just waiting for that to show up. So because of that, I can't install the tank. So I think I'm just going to go ahead and end the video right there. So that's going to be the end of this one. So we got all the wiring done, a lot of the fuel systems done. Next video is going to be, I got to get some 3D printed mounts for the batteries put in, figure out where we're going to put the antennas, attaching the wings. I do not use the way Sebart does it. I'm going to use my own method, and hopefully by the end of that video the new tank will be here and we can get that in, get it run, finish the radio setup, and get this thing in the air. So thanks for watching. Stay tuned for video number 4, which should be the last one for this one. Thanks.